my journey to me is I don't look at it as, I don't feel sorry for myself. Is one thing I don't. I'm grateful.
Welcome to Fatherhood, Breaking the Toxic Cycle. Dive in as real dads bear all, the mess-ups, make-ups, and every heartfelt moment in between. Tune in. It's raw, it's real, and it might just change the way you see family.
Welcome to another episode of Fatherhood, where we're breaking the toxic cycle and looking to heal relationships with fathers and their children. I have a very special guest today, one of my brothers from spiritual ceremonies, and also a friend that I've known for probably about 8 years in the real estate business. And thank you, Martin, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to an exciting podcast today. Just, I know you're very authentic and so forth, and you're going to be willing to share. So I'd like to start with you, just maybe sharing a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then I'll kind of dive deeper into the beginning where little Martin all started.
All right, sounds good. A little bit about me. I'm just a very deep individual. I like to go deep into understanding different types of things about life, and I'm very very spiritual, but also I understand there's a physical aspect of life, so I always want to understand both avenues. But I like sports, I like music. I'm a father of two, husband, and just a little about me. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm in real estate. Been doing that for now been 20 years. Wow, actually 20 years. So, just a very easygoing, free-spirited individual, just, trying to find my place in this interesting life.
Wow. Now, you said something that just resonated. Let me ask you a question. Do you feel you've found your purpose in life?
That's an interesting question because I struggled with that one for a long time. But what is my purpose? What am I here for? And the one thing that resonates with me the most with my purpose is I'm a voice for the people. I speak truth, and whether it's people resonate with it or not, or whether it's their story, however you want to put it, there's truth out there, and I think people need to know the truth. And it's why I've always been so deep in understanding the mysteries of life, and why, when things happen, I'm always understanding it and looking behind the curtains and really seeing deeply into it. So I think my purpose is just to speak truth. And I've been pretty much on that journey now for like probably the last 5 years of understanding, what am I here for? What am I called to do? And it's like, I feel like I have this big heart, and the heart is to love on everybody, but also to, speak really what is the truth of what's going on.
That's what I love about you, that you're authentic and you speak your truth. Now, there was a time when I first met you when I really didn't like you and you really didn't like me. And I thought you were a-hole.
Yeah.
And, because you were just so direct and I was so direct. And honestly, I think what it was is we were a mirror of each other.
Mm.
And it took us probably about 2 years until we partnered up to do some stuff together at the LA County Fair with the real estate business, that we finally let our guards down and started to get to know each other. Do you remember that?
I do. I remember I used to pass by your office every day walking by, and I was like, fuck's this guy always playing music, drinking and calling, and you're just out there laughing. And I was like, fuck's going on in here, dude? And then, but it was interesting. I think I asked you a question, and then you just responded. And I was like, oh, pretty cool dude. And so I think that's how it started, right? And then just led from there.
It did. You bring up an interesting point, those toxic days when, I used to have a full bar in my office. There was a lot of drinking, and, that was my way of gauging success. And, okay, we got another lead. Okay, have a shot, Oh, very dark days, but it was all part of the journey,
Yeah.
So, Martin, you grew up in the San Gabriel Valley, kind of the same neighborhood that I did.
Mm-hmm.
And curious to find out a little bit more about little Martin.
Yeah.
And your upbringing.
Yeah. It's actually interesting. We grew up in the same area, which is kind of another thing that I feel is kind kind of why we're probably cross paths. My journey, little Martin, my upbringing is, I think that's what you asked me, right? I come from a family of, I had a very interesting upbringing. My family was involved with the gang life. So I was around that at a very young age. My stepdad at the time was a drug dealer. So I was around that at a very, very young age a lot. So I knew what little balloons were when I was, 6 years old. And I knew what needles were, and um, I knew when somebody was high off of something, right? And so I got to see a lot of interesting things as a really young kid, which most kids shouldn't really see. My mom, she was young. Her and my dad, they got together in high school. They had kids very young, and it didn't work out. And my dad went his way, and my mom went her way. And my mom kind of, was just an out free spirited person, wanted to have fun, loved going out, just loved loved that era where she would go to all these clubs and just do her thing. And so I bounced around from house to house. Whoever would take care of me that's where I would be. You know.
Let me ask you a question about something you just said. At 6 years old, you knew what balloons were. You knew where needles were. Now, as a 6-year-old child, were you ashamed and embarrassed of that? Or did you wear that like a coat of armor? Like, hey, I'm the cool kid, because it can go either way.
Yeah.
So how did you show up at school and knowing like, hey, my family's part of the gang life. So of course that comes with power and authority and,
Yeah.
it's a different type of presence.
To be very transparent, I was very ashamed of who I was. And it was almost like I didn't have any pride for myself. And sometimes I was scared. I remember being in situations where it was hard. It was hard, but to be able to not fit in, that was hard. And I think there was times where I felt lost. And one of the things I can remember going to school is not being able to finish the year because we had to leave and move because, the house was being watched. It got hot. The cops knew what was going on. So we had to go to another location. Otherwise, the operation would be stopped, right? So I was always being pulled out of schools and going into different schools. So I went to every school in La Puente, every elementary I went to, right? I even went to every school in Hacienda Heights. And it wasn't easy, it was hard. So I would always show up as the new kid, but because of that, it was always, I was always scared. Like, man, what's going to happen?
That's powerful because as parents, especially younger parents, don't realize that their actions have consequences on their children.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm hearing you say is that because of your parents' choices, that impacted you emotionally, psychologically, and it impacted how you spend your school years.
Yeah.
Can you dive a little bit deeper into that? Because I think that's not only a powerful awakening, that's something that you just shared that's very powerful, but I can resonate with that also, but other people can.
Yeah.
And I think fathers need to hear what they're doing to their kids when they make poor choices and what it did for you.
To go deeper into that little Martin, 6 to like 10 years old, I felt unwanted to at times. I felt like I was in the way of everything. It felt like, my childhood at times I felt like was robbed from me. There was things that I really couldn't enjoy. And, I felt that I had really no one to protect me, nobody to look after me. And, it caused a strain on a relationship with my father because I thought my father was weak, didn't want to sacrifice himself for me, and didn't want to, and whatever, that conversation had with him. But going deeper into me feeling is, I would be in school and I would feel alone because it was hard for me to make friends. It was hard for me to pick up the pieces. But what really, really hurt me the most in that part of my journey in life was, I never really got a chance to learn because every time I would go to a new school, they were ahead of where I left off.
Wow.
So not many people know this about me, but, I didn't learn how to read until I was probably about 10, 11 years old. And I had to start over. And I had to really, I didn't know how to do certain things. And so being in school and being told I was retarded, being told I was stupid, being told and being bullied, I would get in a lot of fights, because of that. And I don't think if it wasn't for me being, I have a big, I have a big heart for this, but like special ed teachers to me are special to me. And I remember being told, oh, there goes Martin, he's coming in his little bus, because that's what we would travel in, the little buses, right? But I was in special ed. But my teachers at the time, man, they knew that I had something in me, even though I didn't know I had something in me, right? And they saw greatness in me, and I progressed really fast. And I was learning really quick, and I was catching on fast. And I think that was where my drive started, because one, I didn't want to get made fun of. Two, I wanted to prove to everybody that I was better than what I was being told, of myself. And I wanted to prove that, I'm capable of doing anything. That was my drive, right? And when being told you're stupid, you're never going to do this, never going to do that, that was my fuel. That pushed me. So it took me 2 years to catch up, but I caught up. So by the time I was 12, I was able to go back into regular classes. That's how fast I progressed. And it was because I wanted to get out of that situation so bad. So right around third grade is when they realized it. And I didn't like being in the classes because I would get made fun of. And, on top of that, being poor, not having everything, old shoes, the way I dressed, was funky to people just because, I wore the Chicano type style clothes, so I had to go through a lot. I had to really understand. I think my when I was younger, I really, it set me up to have really low confidence in myself.
You said two things that really resonated with me. The first one is that you were angry at your parents because they chose the gang life and drugs over you. And that's something that we need fathers to understand that are not making the right choices, to each their own. But in the eyes of their son or daughter, they're holding accountable that you don't love me enough to leave that.
Yeah. My my mom, she kept me from my father for a long time. And I think my dad, he's always been a hard worker. My dad, he's tried, he's done the best he could. And he had his own things he had to go through. But my anger towards him was not coming to get me, abandoning. I felt abandoned by him. And whatever his own thoughts and fears he went through, to me I told him were excuses. I said those were excuses because I look at my son and I said, there's no way in hell I would let my son go through what I went through. I would die for him. I would sacrifice my own life. And I told my dad this, I'll sacrifice my own life to make sure my son didn't live a life that wasn't one that he deserved, or at least gave him peace and he felt protected. So I felt that way with my dad. Now on my mom, I used to always tell people I didn't have a mom.
Wow.
And because I felt as a mother, you're supposed to nurture your children. And even at a very young age, I felt like, where's my mom? I was blessed. I said, now that I'm older, I had multiple moms, both my grandmas, my aunt, they were always in my life, and I always had some type of feminine love from somebody. And I feel without them, I wouldn't be who I am today.
Wow. There's another thing that you said, and shout out to all the teachers that really care about their students.
Yeah.
You said that if it wasn't, for your teachers that, believed in you. And I'll use myself as an example. I know sometimes in the past when my children were growing up, you have those teachers that are just real overly involved in the relationship, and they think they know better, but a lot of times they do know better.
Yeah.
And it's our ego as parents that we're so quick to change our children from that classroom to another classroom because, oh, they're just getting in our business too much. And you said something that really hit me because I remember switching my daughter from one class into another because the teachers just always wanted to have the last word, but it wasn't that. You just put the connection together. It's that she cared. And she saw a better fit for my daughter than we as parents. So that was powerful. So, I think that's something that, we as parents have to be conscientious that sometimes those teachers that seem to be most annoying sometimes may have the best intentions, because you just shared how if it wasn't for those teachers that gave you that encouragement, that believed in you, you would have still probably fallen further back as opposed to excelling within 2 years.
I don't think I would be where I'm at today without those teachers. I really don't. The amount of support, the amount of courage, the amount of positivity they instilled in me, but just the fact that they would tell me how much they believe I can do it. And they were godsends, to be honest. Like I from where I started in school and to be in, when I was in school, this Newton Middle School, it's Hacienda Heights Unified School District, which is not a very easy school district to be there. The curriculum's hard. It's not an easy, curriculum, but I remember getting student of the month. And I remember my name going on top of they have a billboard outside. And I remember getting a letter from my teacher and she wrote in there how proud she was.
That's beautiful.
I had to go back to think about that. She sent me a card with the gift certificate saying she was proud. And I know she was happy. But like, just to receive that and be told that was priceless.
Wow. That's powerful. Thank you for that share. The other thing that resonated with me was that based on your upbringing, it showed you how you were going to be a parent and you weren't going to do what was done to you as a child. And that's powerful there because you said something that really resonated. I would do anything for my children. I would die for them.
Yeah.
And that's powerful to see you were able to start the process of breaking that generational cycle, because traditionally we follow in our father's footsteps and our mother's footsteps, and we do the repetition, the cycle of doing the same thing that they did.
Yep.
But what made you shift that you didn't want to follow in their footsteps and be like them? Because that takes a lot of courage. That takes a lot of courage to not follow in their footsteps.
I knew as a father, I grew up without a grandfather. Both of my grandfathers passed away at a young age. And so I guess me understanding that somewhere down the road, growing up, I felt like this huge calling was on me. I don't know what it was, but I always felt like why I would understand things at a higher level, why things just made sense to me. But I knew that I was chosen to break the generational curse. I knew I was chosen to change the men in my family. And I was okay with it when I figured that part out. So once I knew that I had to be, a different type of father. I had to just be different for my kids and show up in a different way. And, um, I grew most of the men in my family were drunks. They were very verbally abusive to their wives, and they were very, machismos, womenizers, and that was gonna continue if I didn't make the corrections and change. So, I was headed down that path, don't get me wrong, but once I truly understood what was happening and when I spiritually awoken, all these things, and I think I wouldn't have known or figured it out if I didn't sit in ceremony. And it wasn't till I actually sat in ceremony where I was able to see things that I normally wouldn't see, because I was able to go into and view things in a different manner and really like see the past, see different things that the men in my family did and how they were fathers.
I'm gonna definitely dive into that in a moment about plant medicine and how it's impacted your life. But I want to go back to something you said that just triggered a memory for me. And it's in that moment when the teacher was proud of you and you got your name on the marquee board and you got the letter and the gift card, and just what a proud moment it was for you, and just seeing that emotion made me think about when my girls experienced something like that. Oh, daddy, I got, student of the week or student of the month. Can we go celebrate? Can we go out to eat? Oh, no, stop. It's just an award. You already got your $5 gift card for, McDonald's and stuff. And to a child, it's a big win. That's a huge, like, you're amongst your peers and you did it. But then the parents, we just dismiss it like it's not that important. And we have to remember to celebrate that. Because I almost feel like I started to turn down the flame in my daughter's heart and mind, because after a couple of minutes I would get annoyed and like, okay, stop already, And then I saw the excitement dimmer, and I didn't realize the pain I was causing. And just reading your emotions kind of brought back a powerful memory for me. So
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome. It was, it's interesting because my daughter, she gets on a roll. She gets, I'm at every event and I celebrate it like it's no other with her. And she knows how proud I am of her. And, it's like we put that award on the refrigerator. The whole week's all about her. And those are the things I've always felt, that will encourage them to strive to be great, because, and who doesn't want to be celebrated, right? That's just a feeling of it's the best feeling you can feel.
So you come out of elementary school and now you're going into high school.
Yeah.
And your mom's keeping you away from your dad.
Yeah.
How do those middle school years look like for you? And does the bullying continue? Do you still feel left out, or are you starting to find your place?
So it's very interesting. So my mom gets a divorce with her husband, who was the drug dealer, who was also very abusive to her. And finally I was living with my grandma at the time. And my mom really just wanted freedom. I mean, that's what I think. Maybe she thought she couldn't, she couldn't do anything for me. So when I was 12, she finally allowed me to move with my dad. my dad had been trying to get me to move with him for so long. So, 12 years old, I moved with my dad. Again, at a place. My dad already had started a family with my current stepmom, and I was just the child in the way of everything. So I go into a different atmosphere, but again, not being protected, did get some good guidance from my father, because my father had a good work ethic and stuff, but he was also very verbally abusive, and he also drank a lot too. So, we had times where we would get some stuff that was very, very, very toxic.
Let me ask you a question before we go on, because this is powerful. For children that are leaving one household and going to another, and then now let's say, okay, so in your case, you went from your mother, you went to your dad now. Mm-hmm. Now he started a new life with a new family, new wife, having children now. What steps could he have taken in order to not make you feel like the black sheep of the family? Because this is an everyday occurrence that happens. Yeah. So what would little Martin say to fathers that are going through that, where now they're taking custody of their son or daughter, but they already have a new family?
You definitely want to make that child feel protected. Let them know that they're not an outsider, that they're part of the family, but also encourage the family members to embrace them and make them a part of the family, not an outcast. You want to include them in everything. You don't want them to, especially if it's your wife and you got remarried and, that's not your kid. You got to have that conversation with your wife and let them know how important that she is to be involved with your child's life, and that to treat him or her the same way as she would treat her kids. And if she can't do that, then it's your responsibility as the man to lead and guide and show and get that respect, and get that love that your child's going to need. Because, going back to my experiences, I was always treated like I was nobody's, and my dad worked all the time. So, I didn't get the things that they got. When Christmas came, they got more gifts than I did. When school shopping came, they got the better clothes than I did. When, there was times they would go out to eat and I would be home and they would just go out without me. Or they'll come back and they would eat the food in the car, and I'd be outside and I'll be watching them. You name it. There's things I can go back and forth and say, but during that experience that I went through, and you going back to the question you asked about my high school years, and in middle school, the one thing that really I leaned towards when I was younger, and this, my dad, when he started coming more in my life, right around when I was 10 years old, I wanted to play a sport, and we tried baseball, and it was too slow for me. Just, it wasn't for me. So I was at La Puente Park, and there was practicing going on, and I was like, oh, what's that? And I was like, oh, it's football. And, La Puente Park had this really good football program, Pop Warner, and I was like, I want to go play that, Dad. So he signed me up, and, football let me get a lot that I was holding it out, and I was able to take that, and whatever I was holding inside, all the hurt, all the pain, all the frustration, I was able to really use it and play on the field, and because it's such a physical sport.
Did your father show up to your games?
When I was when I was younger, yes. When I was in high school, no. He didn't see one game. It was really, really hard for me because I was a better player in high school than I was when I was in Pop Warner. There was games that, I would have like a 15 to 20 tackle game, where wow. I made like 15, 20 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and nobody's there watching me. And that it hurt, but that's, that's the part that growing up, I had to really, really, really go through. But my senior year, which is something I regret, is I ended up quitting because I didn't feel like I had support, because everything was always about what was best for me, but not what I wanted to do. And he wanted me to become a cop or be do something like that. And he put me in the fire explorers, and that started to take over my time. And he was more focused on that. And that was, so my love of playing football died out my senior year because I was just bummed out about being told I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that. And, it goes back to the confidence in myself that was instilled in me at a very young age. I lost confidence and just quit.
This is a common reoccurring thing with children who have absentee mothers and fathers that don't show up for their games or their recitals or, their Boy Scout activities or Girl Scout activities. They quit. They quit because they feel unsupported. They quit because they feel embarrassed because other people's parents are there. And this is important for parents to understand that when you don't show up, you're hurting your son or daughter emotionally and psychologically. And then you want to give up.
Yeah. You know what I think, and this is just my thought on that, is I think our priorities are fucked. And I really believe that we're geared to believe that we can't miss work. Our work's more important. If I call off, I'm going to lose my job. And it's why I'm an entrepreneur. It's because, you know what? And I had a conversation with my wife. I said, you can't pay me enough money to miss time with my kids. Because for me, it's like, I don't care if I'm working for somebody. That manager, that CEO, that president, that whoever it is, they're going to take the time off to go and be there for their child. And most of the time they do. And maybe some don't, but they do. But the people in the workforce, I think they're so scared to lose their job that they forget how important their kids are. And that's the part where I speak my truth and where I feel like, when we're talking about purpose, is like, look, I would rather be a free man than to be a slave of a system that controls my time, that I have to clock into 8 hours a day, get heavily taxed, and lose time with my family.
Wow. That's deep. That's deep. I'm going to go backward just a little bit because there's also something that stood out that I just can't let get by. And this is for you stepmothers and stepfathers out there that now have to embrace your spouse's biological child. And the impacts that you have on them when you show favoritism. Because I hear this over and over again, where the biological, son or daughter comes into the relationship that's already established. And now, because this new family is already in place, it's that preferential treatment. And you see what's going on. They think you don't see because you're children, but you know that they're getting more gifts. They're getting better clothes. They're getting that extra food before they get home. And that has damaging effects on our children. And I just want to see if there's anything you can expand on that, because that's a powerful concept that stepmothers and stepfathers have to realize. You have to embrace your spouse's children.
I think it starts with the husband and the wife. You have to create a system that you both can agree, both make sure 100% you're committed to, and understand that what's most important is the child. And also understand that it is your guys' responsibility to include that child and bring them into the family, and not have the child be secluded. My experience and why I went through is because my stepmom had a bad relationship with my mom. My mom was, she was, she grew up in the gang life. She said something, she said it. If she was going to fight you, she was going to tell you she was going to fight you. She was going to fight you. So she threatened this poor lady multiple times and scared the shit out of her. And she took it out on me when I got there. And,
Wow.
and I was that's her kid, and so I got the blunt of whatever my mom and her did and how that relationship. So I was just, that's Francis's kid. I don't want anything to do with him, whatever. But had my dad shown up as a leader, led his family, sat down with his wife and said, this is my son, regardless of what happened in the past, we are to make his life better than what it was, probably would have had a different experience.
Wow. That's powerful. So you're in high school. You now had this transition from your mother to your father. And now how many stepbrothers or sisters do you have?
So it's two sisters. It's a brother. Or no, he's a half brother or what? Brother. And then my stepmom brings, her sister passes away and she brings her sister's son. So he's living there. So it's 5 of us in the house.
So now it's a truly blended family.
Yeah.
And so how do your high school years look like for you? When you're feeling like an outcast. Hey, can I call you a black sheep? Do you feel like a black sheep?
It was. Yeah,
Okay.
what it was.
So what is life like as the black sheep of the family? Because your father didn't step up to let it be known that my son's going to be accepted and he's going to have the same experience of all the other siblings.
Growing up in high school, the only thing in the back of my mind was when I turned 18, I'm out. And ultimately that's what happened. I never felt like I had a home. Ever. I never felt I had peace. Ever. But mainly just feeling like I had nowhere to go. And, as I got older in high school, I always knew, like, I don't have a place to go. If something were to happen, where am I going to go? Nobody wants me. So it impacted me to really, really try to figure things out. And so I ended up moving with my grandma after high school, my dad's mom. And I in high school, just that dynamic of not feeling wanted or feeling like just not being comfortable. As soon as I graduated, I wanted out. So in my high school years, I always made myself busy with sports because I didn't want to be home. So I would go to football practice and I would go to school and I wouldn't get home till 7, 8 o'clock at night purposely. I would stay and practice more just because I didn't want to be home. I would wrestle. I would do different sports just to not be home. Even when football was on off season, I would go do something else. I took welding and I would stay after school and do that. Like I would stay at a buddy's house, and it just, just my high school years was just, not wanting to be home, just I'd rather be doing something else because if I knew I was going to get home, it was, I'm not saying I was the perfect kid because, I was troubled, obviously, but, it wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy experience for me. So I, I don't want to say that it's anyone's fault the way I felt. Maybe I could have been a better child at times. Maybe, not done certain things the way I did, but I didn't know any better. So I only was doing based on what I was shown at a young age. I don't think anyone really understood that. Why I was the way I was. No one knew. People just, no. If you really fucking took the time to say, what happened to you? And I used to tell my dad that if you fucking cared, you would have got me help. If you fucking gave a shit and you weren't so lost and worried about whatever the fuck it is you were going through in life and so lost with drinking every fucking weekend and you really said, my son has a problem. There's something wrong. I need to get him help. But you didn't get this. I had this conversation. He can't listen to me. I told him, I said, you didn't give a fuck. I said, because you know why? Because you didn't care about fixing yourself when that's your responsibility. I was like, now I'm older and I'm supposed to just let everything just be. I can't. I can't. So going back to that, my experiences is like, I don't think anyone really asked me if I was okay.
That's powerful. So you were lost, you were confused, you were struggling, but it was such a simple concept. It's just asking, son, are you okay? And that could have possibly unlocked the door to start the process of healing.
Or at least getting me some type of help to like speak to a psychologist or something, because I mean, not many people know this neither, but I have attempted suicide multiple times when I was young. And there was times where I was just like, why am I here? Nobody wants me. Nobody cares about me. I had two dumb fuck parents have sex, have a kid, and they don't give a shit. That was how I thought. So why, my goal was to give them pain. I was like, I want them to fucking hurt. I had already lost my sister at a young age. They lost my sister. My sister passed away from cystic fibrosis when she was 8 years old and I was 7. So they went through pain losing one child. So I was like, fuck it. They're going to lose both of us. I'd rather be with my sister is how I thought. That way both of them can fucking be in pain and they can figure out how dumb fucks. That's just how I thought. They can figure it out themselves. They don't have no kids they don't want me anyways is what I thought. None of them care. So nobody really knows. Not many people know that I was at that point of my life from 12 years old, 13 years old, all the way up until about 17 years old I tried multiple times. And right when I was going to do it, I would hear a voice saying kind of like, you're needed. You're needed. And then I would stop whatever it is I was going to do to myself.
And that's, thank you for sharing, because by us as parents not asking questions, we can potentially lose a child. It's something simple as sometimes we just chalk it up as, oh, they're just being dramatic, or they're just being, they just want attention. But there's really hurt and pain going on inside.
Yeah, there really is.
Sometimes it's just, are you okay? How can I help you? And I know parents that have lost their children to suicide, and then they live in regret now. They live in this prison of resentment and hurt and pain and anger. But in the moment, they didn't show up.
Yeah. And if it wasn't for my own strength, I probably wouldn't be here today. Like I've always told myself this. I know I'm needed on this earth for some reason, and I've gone through so much in life, and they always say the ones that go through the most are the ones that are needed the most, right?
Mhm.
And so my journey to me is I don't look at it as I don't feel sorry for myself. Is one thing I don't. Um, I'm grateful. I'm grateful to a lot of things, but going back to that is just always just ask, check in with your kids. If you feel something's off, something's probably off, and just take the time to just let them know that, hey, you can talk to them about anything, and that you're here for them, and you know that's the best thing you can do.
And it's interesting because I've had conversations with parents over the last couple of months who are getting a backlash from their adult children.
Mm.
And I've literally had conversations with the parents that I literally was at a point where I wanted to kill myself just to show them pain because of how they treated me.
The
So it works
parents.
both, yes.
Oh wow.
So it works both ways. And especially when you have adult children, because sometimes the parent thinks like, you know what, I did the best I could, and
Yeah.
but now I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
And literally just had a conversation like this just a couple of days ago. So it's interesting how to see it happens on both sides of the fence.
Yeah, it's definitely I'm going through my own journey of acceptance and loving my parents for who they are, and appreciating that they only did the best that they could for what they knew, right? Um and I know both my parents had a hard life too. You know, they both have, and I've gotten closer to my mom, and I've forgiven my mom, and I don't hold anything to her anymore. And she's been a great grandmother. She's been a great mother. I'm still repairing the relationship with my father. I can't always be the one to try to fix things, which I understand. So, I don't have any ill feelings towards him in any way. I don't, I love him. I, you know, I can't force people to do anything, as I realized, and, my phone's always there. I feel like I've been the one always calling, always checking in, and it's like, got to go both ways.
So let me ask you a question. You're on this path towards forgiving your father.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go deep.
Mm-hmm.
So if the adult version of Martin is on the path of forgiving him, does little Martin forgive?
No. Until he actually acknowledges that he abandoned me and makes an effort, I don't think little Martin will forgive him. And that's been the part that's been hard, because I'm like this, right? You know, he's a prideful man. I don't think he ever will. And I'm learning to accept that. But the one thing big Martin's doing, which is me now, is loving on little Martin. So that way he doesn't hold that pain anymore. And by me doing that is I look at my son and I just try to be the best father I can to him, and teach him and make sure I'm there for him. And, when I must act a certain way and I see him break down because I'm maybe yelling or something, then I always give him a hug and say, I'm sorry, that I'm here for him, that I'm just trying to teach you. And I always let him know I'm only trying to teach you. Don't take it the way you are. And I love you, because it reminds me of me. And that's the part that I get to relive.
Wow. So I'm gonna focus on two things you just said, and then I definitely want to start to explore the relationship of you with your children now. The first thing has to do with, you said something that really stood out. And you said, you're learning to love you. You're healing little Martin. The big Martin is healing. What does that mean? Like for parents struggling out there that have faced a similar situation, and you said, I'm healing myself by I'm showing my little Martin attention. Can you kind of maybe
Mm.
articulate what does that look like? Because it right here is a powerful moment
Yeah.
for fathers that are struggling with this.
Our inner child will always come out in situations. That's just how it is, right? If we have childhood wounds, they come out. So whenever I feel like I'm not wanted in certain situations, I father little Martin. You're okay. I want you. I'm here for you. I always will love you. You're always protected. I have you. You don't have to be scared of anything because I'm always going to protect both of us.
So you're saying this to yourself. Big Martin is saying this to little Martin.
Yes.
Are you verbalizing it, or is it just mental?
I'm verbalizing mental. I'm talking in third person inside my soul. And I'll stop and I'll love on myself. I'll go do something fun. That's the beauty about things, If I'm going through something, I'll go and eat something I enjoy because it's going to bring that enjoyment. Like if I was a little kid, right? I'll go play something. I'll go and I'll just give myself the space I need. But mainly the thing is just keep myself in that mindset of like, I can father myself and I can mother myself. And the things I went through as a child and I didn't get, I'm giving to myself now. And when I'm going through something and I'm feeling a certain way, or just, I don't feel like I'm being loved because that inner child's coming out of me where I'm feeling not loved, then I'll give myself love in different ways.
I just need you to repeat that because that was so profound. You said Big Martin is telling little Martin, I can father myself and I can mother myself. Can you just expand on that one more time? Because I don't want to miss that. That's
so, when little Martin is needing something that he didn't get as a child, like maybe he wants that father figure that can talk to him about wisdom, I'm going to give him that. If little Martin wants that closeness and love and just that, that feminine little essence that they get from your mom, I'm going to give it to him because I know what to do to give it to him now. And so, when I seek wisdom and I know like the inner child is coming out, then I'll talk to myself and say, hey, this is what I would do in the situation, or this is what we should do. And it has impacted my life in a big way. But the interesting thing now about the mothering is, my mom has stepped into that role. And so I have access to that. So at times I'll just call her and we'll have a conversation and she'll give me what I need. And the one thing about my mom right now is she'll drop anything for me.
Really?
She'll drop anything for me. Like if I told her I need her, she'll come to my house. Like that's the commitment she's made, I guess, to give. That's what I mean, like the healing part, like, and why my love has grown so much for her now is because at an older age, she stepped into a different role of like, I'm going to make sure he knows I love him no matter what. And she has done. And she'll listen to me bicker and complain about things that happened in the past. And when I'm done, she just says, I love you. I just want you to know I'm here for you and I'll always be here for you. You can tell me whatever you want. And that's how we leave. So like, that's been interesting because the mothering part, I've been able to get that from her. Even though I still give it to myself, I'm able to get that from her.
And there's nothing you could have done as a child. It was just her journey.
It was her journey.
She had to self-discover.
Yeah. And she told me, she said, it wasn't until you told me, because she was having some struggle. And I said, why don't you go and like sit with somebody and maybe get some counseling? And I didn't know this, but she did quite a bit of counseling. And she, I guess, understood what she went through in life. And she started going through that journey of healing and accepting of all the stuff she's done. And in that process, me healing, it transitioned to her. And she started seeing who I was, and she started seeing my growth. And she started really just embracing like her son's journey and just seeing like all the stuff I've gone through. And it empowered her to go and seek it for herself because she saw how I was changing.
Wow. So I'm going to challenge you to do something today when you leave here.
Okay.
And it's something I did a couple of weeks ago based on a conversation that my daughter had with.
Okay.
And it had to do with that damn Barbie movie and why I never bought them the Barbie dream house. But I was charging my car a couple of weeks ago, and I just found like I wanted to bring out that inner child in my adult children, but also in all of us as a family. So I walked across the street and bought us all a toy that we could play with together. So I'm going to challenge you when you leave here. There's a Walmart down the street or a Target.
Okay.
I'm going to challenge you to go buy a toy for not only Little Morn, but for your daughter and your son and your wife. A toy, a doll or something that you guys can all play with together this weekend.
Okay.
And just help them to continue to love on their inner child, but also you and your wife also experience that inner child feeling with your children.
Yeah. That sounds actually will be fun.
The other thing that I want to go back to, and then we're going to dive into your relationship with your children now, is the loss of your sister.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot more siblings experience that than I even realized in childhood. And I want you to take me back to the place, if it's okay, and just, there's already a lot of toxicity going on in the home. And then now your sister gets sick. Were you guys close? And because you guys were, a couple years apart from each other?
Yeah, we're 1 year apart.
1 year. Wow. Okay, 1 year apart. So you guys grew up together.
Yeah.
So how did you process that? And what advice would you give parents whose children who are not only facing the loss of a child, but they have siblings, that their son or daughter, brother, sister passed? And how do you help them cope with that?
Yeah.
What could they have done at that moment in time, if it was a whole different context, to help you? Because I'm sure they were struggling.
Yeah. So it was a very hard time during those years when she was diagnosed at 5 and told that, she only had so much time to live. And my I don't even think I was ever told that she was passing by my parents. I wasn't even allowed to see her on her last days. And I just remember being home and not knowing what was going on during those the final weeks, and just so much chaos going on in the house. And, it was such a blur to me. I just know my mom and my dad they weren't working well together. My, stepdad was a bully and, was kind of just being a bully to my dad, and my dad being himself, just try to, be there for my sister as much as possible, which I know he was during her last 10 days. He was there a lot at the hospital, and, it was hard for me because I didn't see her much, towards the end. And as close as we were, I didn't really get to see her. And my advice would be like, if you're losing a child to somebody that's just to some type of illness, include your kid, no matter how old they are. And so they know that, they know what death is. And I think we're always so scared of dying that we forget to live. And living in that moment would have been the most important thing. Because if I could have just spent just an hour with her during her last moments and be able to like just have that experience, I could have cherished that for the rest of my life. And, it's always been a blur to me, those times. And I don't want to say I forgot her because I never will forget her. But I feel like I wasn't, I feel like it was taken from me. The experiences of her last moments on earth. And that was hard.
That's powerful there, because as a parents, we think we're doing the right thing by sheltering our children from this trauma
Yeah.
or this passing. But what you're saying is that no, don't take that memory, that final time from me. Let me have those final moments myself.
Yeah. I didn't even get to say goodbye. My own way, And she didn't get to say goodbye. And I know she knew, she was smart. She knew what was happening. She was, she knew. And for me not to be able to see her, and that goes back to like, just my journey and what I had to go through with my parents, and just like realizing that, I'm going to learn from everything and make some changes of what I want to bring to my kids. So,
when's the last time you looked at a picture of your little sister?
So her anniversary is coming up next month of when she passed. So I typically look at it every year she passed.
I'd love to see you post a picture one day of the two of you together and just honor her legacy.
Oh, I will. Her legacy does live on through my daughter, because my daughter is very similar to her.
Wow.
So
now let's fast forward into the last couple of years in the present, and how your upbringing has impacted. And actually, even before that, how did your upbringing impact you going into your adult years? With dating and relationships and friendships, because you're coming out of this toxicity and you've had this up and down roller coaster and bullying and not feeling wanted and left out. How did that impact you going into adulthood before we even get into your children? Was there drinking? Was there drugs?
the one thing I'll tell you that I'm grateful I was not a drug addict. I really never really was a big drinker. So those are the things. Did I do it socially? Yeah. But it wasn't something I did a lot. Going into my social, young adult age, I had really, really low self-esteem of myself. So I was very shy and never really, I didn't even go to my own school prom because, I was fearful of rejection, fearful of being told no. And, I think I had a conversation with my dad about wanting to ask somebody to the prom, but didn't want to feel embarrassed not having a way to get the person there, right? My date. And he just kind of looked at me and said, well, you got to figure it out. What do you want me to do? Rent you a limo? I'm not going to rent you a limo. Right away gave me the whole, I'm not made out of money bullshit that I always will get, and that we're not with this and that. And then 2 years later, I see my brother and all of them with the limo, and they're going to their prom, and it's like, so, I didn't date much young. I never felt, I guess I never really had the confidence. And, it was interesting for me. I was always outgoing, I'd have great conversations with different women, but I didn't have the courage to ask. I always felt like, oh, they wouldn't want to. Why would they want me? So it was very, very, very tough for me. And, my dad would make fun of me a lot. When I was young age, it was always like, oh, you should be out there. I had multiple girlfriends, this and that. And it's like, I didn't really date in high school. And again, it's like, why wouldn't you fucking ask your son, what's wrong? Are you okay? Just another unawareness, just thinking everything's okay, going with the flow. And, you know, so yeah, it was very interesting for me.
So now let's fast forward into the present and your children. You have a daughter. How's your daughter?
My daughter's 11.
Okay. And then your son is
5.
okay. And you're married and
Yeah.
you now, you know how you don't want to show up as a father. So how does your relationship look like with your kids?
I'm very, very present with them. I try to be involved as much as I can. I try to be the example of, of what a healthy male figure should look like. That's to me is important. And, I try to do as much as I can with them, like this Saturday, I'm taking my daughter with me to the football game. She likes going. So me and her are going to go by ourselves.
Which game is that?
The Rams and the Raiders are playing in
wow.
that's SoFi. So me and her will go. And then, my mom's been wanting to go. And so I found some tickets for her and she's going to take her boyfriend. And so we're all going to go. And, my daughter asked me, to take her. She wanted to go. She's been wanting to go. So I said, I was going to take somebody else. And I said, well, I'm sorry to do this. And I hope this person doesn't take it wrong, but I'm sorry, my daughter comes first. She's going to be my first choice always. And she's excited. She's telling everybody at school about it.
Let me ask you a question because you're taking your daughter
Mm-hmm.
and you're taking and then your mom and her boyfriend are going. As a kid, did you ever see yourself creating a memory like this as an adult? That one day you guys would go to a sporting event or that you guys would do something together because in that moment as a child, you probably felt like she never was going to heal. And a lot of parents don't heal.
Yeah.
So did you ever envision like one day your mom would be at a sports game?
No. And, it's funny because, we don't think about those things, but the experience is going to be awesome, right? The memory, being in the moment with her, she wanted to go. And my uncle who lives in, Bullhead is coming down and he tells her they were all supposed to go together, right? Her boyfriend, and my uncle. And my uncle's like, I'm going to be too tired. And, I don't want to go. So mom's like saying, oh, well, he doesn't want to go. So we're not going to go maybe next time. And I said, no. And I told my mom, I said, Mom, if your boyfriend doesn't want to buy your ticket, I'm going to buy your fucking ticket. Me, you, and Gabby are going to go. And he could watch the game with my Nino. I said, they can have drinks and do whatever the hell they're going to do there. And you're going to go with me. And she's like, oh, shit. Like, she's like, are you serious? I said, yeah, I'm serious. Like, you want to go? You're going to go. And so, of course, she wants to go with her boyfriend. Yeah, I get it. But I tell her, I said, look, just because my uncle doesn't want to go, just because he's going to be tired, he could stay home and watch the game. I was like, you don't live your life for anybody but yourself. And I'm reminding her of this, right? I was like, you're always doing these things. I was like, live for you. Like, I'm going to experience it. You've been wanting to go to the game. So the seats next to me, I know the owner of those seats. And I messaged him and he's like, yeah, dude, I got 2 of them. You want them? Give you the park. Give me a hell of a deal. And I'm like, text her back and said, hey, tell Eric this is how much it is. And they're like shocked. They're like, yeah, $250 for both tickets. And they're really good seats. She's like, each? They thought each. I was like, no, for both. For both tickets. And I was like, you're pretty much getting them face value. And the seats are good. So he ended up, he's going to pay for the tickets. But I said, well, I'm going to buy your ticket whether he goes or not,
when you're sharing this story, I'm kind of looking in your eyes and I'm saying, that's little Martin.
Mm-hmm.
Wanted to spend time with this.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the icing on the cake because you also get to experience it with your daughter.
Yeah. Yeah. And, when I was young, I used to always want to go to these games and it was always told, we don't have the money. And, so kid, I never experienced them. So when I got older, I said, fuck that. My kids are going to enjoy the luxuries of life, things that I didn't have. And, so I got season tickets to the Las Vegas Raiders, and my kids got to experience that. And my daughter, she looks forward to it. Dad, are we going to go to a game? When are we going to go to a game? And so I'm taking her to the LA one, and they don't know. They just want to, to them, it's like, it's exciting. They get to tell their friends, like, so for me, I'm also living in the moment as little Martin with my kids. And so when I'm going to the game, I'm going to be little Martin. Oh, let's go buy this. Oh, let's go do this. Let's go get, what do you want? Like, and I think for me, that's the part where I get to really enjoy myself, and same thing with my mom and her boyfriend, like, oh, what do you want to eat? Let's do this. Like, no, we're going to have fun. Like I'm telling her, hey, do you want to tailgate? I really don't. She's like, why? Because I want to go down to the field. There's field level. Let's go watch them practice. Let's go really. So she's like, oh, cool. We can do that. I said, yeah. So that's what we're going to do. We all get to be little again, in that experience. And my daughter gets to see them practice, and maybe she might get an autograph. I don't know. Like, it might be something that but I also get to experience as being that inner child experience again. So, I allow myself to have those experiences, but I get to enjoy it with my mom, and she gets to enjoy it with me.
It's beautiful. I'm going to revert now to plant medicine as we start to wrap up this amazing podcast. And I know with the previous guest I was just here earlier, he shared how plant medicine and ayahuasca and psilocybin actually showed him how to be a parent.
Yeah.
And unlocked a lot things that he knew the way he needed to show up. And I'm just going to ask you, how has plant medicine impacted your life and how you show up for not only your children, but also for your wife?
It's allowed me to really go within myself in a different level that I've never thought I could. But I guess energetically, I was able to really just see parts of my family that I never really would have been able to. I was able to see what my parents went through, raising a sick daughter, being really young. My mom, my dad had me when he was 17. My mom, I think my mom was 18 at the time. So I was able to experience that and really just see that. And it allowed me to really understand and see that the kids are the most important. And that I remind myself that they're the most important. Be patient. And my son's running around being loud and being this normal, like, kid, don't stop it. And don't get me wrong, at times, being an adult, you tend to be like, hey, quiet. And then I remember, I'm like, that's okay. And what really opened my mind to it is we had some friends over last week, and her son's really outgoing, free-spirited, right? And, he walks around barefoot, whatever, being a kid. He puts his feet on the wall and the walls get dirty. And I can tell she's bothered, like, oh shit. And we trying to clean it. And she looked at me and she's like, she felt bad. Like, I'm sorry. I looked at her and said, he's just a kid. I was like, I could paint the walls. I was like, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's just being a kid. But I said it in a way where it was like, I don't give a shit. Like, let him be. Like, he's fine. Like, he's doing what he's supposed to be doing, and we shouldn't interrupt that. And I wanted her to know, like, he's fine. Like, don't feel like in any way like he's being a kid. Like, we are to let the children be children and remember that we were once that. And I had to go back, and what I went back to is remembering when I did something as a kid and I got yelled at and spanked. because I did something as a kid. And I was like, and it reminded me of that. And I was like, he was just playing, putting his feet on the wall, just being, being a kid. And I was like, shit, I remember getting my ass beat for doing that. And I'm like, I'm gonna make him feel uncomfortable or his mom, It's just a wall. I can care less. And you know what? I didn't paint the wall. I left it. Reminded me of being a kid.
It's interesting you say that because I went to grab something to eat the other day. And normally I just grab and head back to the office, but I was sitting down and there was a couple there with their son. And he was running back. I was sitting at a booth. And he was running back in the booth. And then he kind of popped me on the head. I turned around and I just kind of laughed. Like I was enjoying the laughter, so I was eating just kind of on my phone and stuff. And she's, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, And then she started to yell and scold her. I think he was probably 2 years old. And I said, excuse me. It's like, yeah. She's like, no, I said, I'm sorry. I said, no. Can you do me a favor? Can you never apologize for your son again? He's just been a kid.
Oh, wow.
And the look on her face was like, and she had to sit for a moment to process it because even the boyfriend or husband, because I just had to shut her down. Like, right away, like, okay, well, no, don't apologize. Just make it. So that just kind of reminded me of that story. And we're so quick as parents, especially young parents, that we want to scold our children or we want to correct their behavior, but they don't know anybody. They're just exploring. They're just being kids. They have no fear. They have no boundaries. And when we instill our fear on them, when we instill our rules on them that are just outside the norm, we hinder their growth. We hinder their emotion. We create trauma.
We do. And it's important as parents not to interrupt their journey. And I've learned that. And I said, you know what? Who am I? We have beliefs and we want to instill those beliefs in our kids, but we also have to allow their minds to freely think for themselves and not interrupt their journey of what they're going through, because I feel like we're supposed to be like, we're elders. We should guide them. Because what would happen in a tribe, right? There was elders and you would look for them for guidance, but you would learn from your mistakes. They wouldn't interrupt you from learning, right? And so the way I look at things is like, I'm the elder. Yes, I'm the father, but I'm the elder. I've gone through life. I have experiences. So they're going to go through life and they're going to make mistakes, but I'm not going to be angry at them because that's not how we teach them. That's not how they're going to learn. They're going to learn by making mistakes and learning from them. So, my daughter, yesterday, we're sitting at the kitchen table and we're eating, and my wife, she's making them food and she starts mouthing off like a normal 11-year-old would. I just grabbed her phone, put it next to me, and she starts telling me a bunch of stuff, and she's getting really aggravated and starts talking loudly, right? And I'm calm. And I said, hey, we don't communicate like that with one another. She's like, but why are you taking my phone? And, her phone's a big deal. And I said, do me a favor, go take a shower, process what you're doing. And when you come back and you can explain to me what you did, get your phone back. So we took her phone and she goes, takes a shower, and I asked her, what did you do? And she's telling me, and I said, no. I said, we're your parent. You are to respect us no matter what. I said, because respect is important. And I said, the other thing is, when you get frustrated, you can't communicate like this to people, even us. I said, because it's not how you communicate. I said, so you need to learn to control the way you talk and don't come out of tone. I said, otherwise it's going to cause more problems. I said, but this is the last time I'm going to tell you. I said, next time you're going to figure it out on your own. As I told her that, and here's your phone. I said, but just know that there's always a lesson in everything. Remember, whether it's positive or negative, you got to sit back with yourself and say, what can I learn from this? And reprocess what happened. I said, because that's where those nuggets are for you. I said, because I could tell you, I said, but you need to figure it out on your own. That's how you're going to learn. And she kind of looked at me, and that's how I talk to my daughter. I don't put like, no, you got to do this. You're doing it wrong. No. Like, at times my wife will do that, but she's starting to also kind of revert back into the like, yeah, let's not be that way neither. It still comes out because that's how she was raised that way and we were raised that way, right? But I always tell her, hey, our job is not to interrupt their journey. Our job is to be their guide and be the best examples we can for them. And if we do that, our kids will be fine because they will be exactly who they're meant to be.
Wow. This has been an amazing share today. And are there any closing thoughts you want to share with fathers out there that maybe have gone through a similar upbringing like you, and maybe just, I don't want to say best practices, but just key takeaways that you could offer them that will give them hope that there is healing and you can change that story?
Yeah. I would really look at the men that you surround yourself. There's nothing wrong with anybody. I don't want to say that, but if you really want to change and be different, start surrounding yourself by better men that can be a better example for you and are on the path of healing. And whether they are or not, that's okay. But at least, don't put yourself in toxic situations or things that can revert you back to the way that you were brought up. Now, we can't control everybody, but we can control our environments. And I've learned that. So, get really curious about who you are and start to really figure yourself out. Because once you get curious about you and once you start figuring you out, it's going to open the doors to really becoming a better father, becoming a better husband, becoming a better, better man. And I think for me in my journey was, I wanted to be a good man. Somebody that can be an example of what's possible and at least help somebody else have an example to basically say, man, this is a better path, a better way. I'm not perfect. I'm not saying I am, but, I definitely would say, try to find somebody that you can resonate with, that you can have conversations with to help you through things and, be that guide and just make sure you have that support whenever you need that guidance. And, don't feel bad about the past. The past is a good stepping stone of how to become better, and forgive yourself. That's the main thing. Forgive yourself and don't punish yourself.
Wow. I'm sure a lot of people out there don't know that you're an artist also, and you like to make music. And want to just maybe share on that a little bit? Because I think that's a big part of bringing up the little Martin inside of you.
It's interesting. I've been doing music since I was 17 years old. But it goes back to the insecurities of actually, like, I'll make the beats, I'll do all that, but to actually record something, I get stuck. Because it's that fear of being rejected. But as of late, I've been feeling more and more comfortable. And it's funny because I hear like, oh, you're past your prime, what are you going to do? You're 41 years old. What can you do? I said, I'm not doing this to get famous. I'm not doing this to get rich. If one person hears a song and they can relate to it and it impacts them in a way that's positive, I'm good with it.
It's beautiful. Well, thank you very much for coming on. And this is Fatherhood, Breaking the Toxic Cycle. And we're wrapping up another episode.